Thanks, Lauren. I will forgive you for the dramatic joke. I've made fun of you a few times as well, I know, so it's okay. Thank you all for being here. I totally agree with Father Mills when he said at the beginning, it's true for me too. This is one of my favorite nights of the year. There are very specific nights that are favorites of mine. The top favorite night of the year for me is the Easter Vigil, when I get to welcome all these young people into the Catholic Church every year. It's the night of the year. But this is right up there with that night. And it's an amazing thing as a pastor of the Newman Center to know there are so many people who appreciate and support this apostolate, this mission, this work that we are trying to do in being faithful to God. I want to thank Lizzie. Lizzie's positivity is one of my gal strengths, but I think it's Lizzie's top strength in her company. I don't even know if she knows that, but Lizzie is the epitome of welcoming and bringing students into the Newman Center in the most incredible way. Like, she literally is just willing to put herself out there and tap a kid on the shoulder and say, "Hey kid, what's your name?" Right here. And just strike up a conversation. She does it so naturally, and she does it all the time. And I had the privilege of serving last weekend with Lizzie on a Koinonia retreat, Koinonia number 36, and Lizzie was the director of that retreat. She organized the whole thing. There's a ton of work that goes into it. It starts at the beginning of September. We work for 2 months to get ready for it, for these candidates who come. And she's amazingly organized and did a beautiful job. So thank you, Lizzie. Thanks for your words tonight. Appreciate it. Thanks to you as well, Curtis, for that great talk. I don't know your story, but it's great to hear it every time you tell it. And I have known Curtis since he was in college, and he did become an acolyte when we asked him to do that. And faith has been an important part of his life during his entire life. He's the real deal. I assure you of that. And it's great to have you on campus helping form young people when you have that kind of faith and that kind of character. So thank you for your words tonight and being here. Really appreciate it. I also want to do a little shout out and thanks to all the Newman Center staff and who work tirelessly every day including our focus missionaries, and they come to work every day, bought into the mission of what we do. And a special shout out as well to Jude and the development staff, because they organize primarily. They're the ones who organize this event, and they do a fantastic job. In fact, this is the first year, we've come close, but this is the first year every available seat is full at our dinner. So we have to make a deal with the fire marshal next year if we're going to expand the dinner. So, but it's great, and it's they worked really, really hard. So thank you. Let's thank everybody for this. I want to acknowledge in a special way one of our staff members tonight. And that would be Lori Basha, who is here back at the table. I see her there. Lori was working at the Newman Center when I came to college in 1982. And she actually came before that. In fact, Lori's start date, I believe this is accurate, is at the Newman Center was February 4th, 1974. And so when Lori retires in February, she will have completed 45 years of service, of giving her life to the community. If there's probably one word that I'd use to describe Lori, it's loyalty. She has an incredible sense of loyalty and an incredible sense of being careful in the work that I have to do to be, to adhere to confidentiality. She handles things for me like psychological assessments that come in for seminarian candidates. She has access to those things. I have to have somebody that I can trust who can deal with those kinds of sensitive documents and things and have very real consequences for people's lives. And she's done it for years now in such a beautiful way. And I'm so grateful for her service and everything that she has given to the church. And Lori, I have a little something to give you tonight. There's more to come. This is a sign. with college students who are into every trend and know everything and about all of those things. And so I really don't, but I kind of try to keep my eyes open so I can go out and kind of reach them where they are. I'm willing to do whatever I need to reach them where they are, as long as it's not sinful. So I don't know how much you know about college student fashion right now, but I've discovered this. For college men, like the really most important element of a wardrobe for college men is socks. How many of you knew that? No? Yes, a few of you. Okay, all right. So every Monday night I go over to the Phi Kappa house for dinner, for formal dinner. And the guys are awesome. They dress up in their suit and tie every Monday night for dinner, as they're expected to. And then we go into the chapter room for meeting. And I noticed this really just at the beginning of this year. The guys all sit down in their suit and ties, and they're all wearing these crazy socks. Psychedelic colors, socks with footballs on them, all these. And it happens every week, and they've got collections of them. And they wear them. This is like their signature piece of clothing that they wear every time, I guess. So I've been intrigued by that. In fact, I'll confess, I did a Google search on men's crazy socks. In my Facebook newsfeed, I'm getting ads every day for men's socks. All these crazy patterns and everything. And I'm making a brave step forward today. I wore a pair tonight. Now, granted, they're a little conservative compared to most of the socks these guys are wearing, but they are black with white polka dots. One of our missionaries and her student disciples ran up and bought those for me at J. Crew. In fact, that's the only thing I can wear from J. Crew, because there's no sizes in J. Crew. They bought me a pair of Scotch glasses on them, and I decided not to wear those tonight, but I might be wearing them later tonight. A number of years ago, in my conversations when I visited with John Cook, John and I have been friends for years now, he was talking to me and telling me about this idea that he does every year with the volleyball team of getting a theme for the year. And it's a really important thing for him. And I pay a lot of attention to what John does, because John's an amazing coach. Who in the state of Nebraska doesn't know that? John Cook is an awesome, awesome coach. And so I like to study him and what he does and what he thinks he did. Last year, for example, which he didn't come up with the theme, we all remember it, right? With each other, for each other. The women on the team came up with that, and they won the national championship. So to prove that point, John would say it's very important. So I started doing that, and I did it the first year, and we took that great story, the North Platte Canteen story of we're during the Second World War, and we used that as our theme at the Newman Center for talking about loving service, and it was awesome. And then the next year, I have to think of another theme, and then about year 6, year 7, you're going like, why did I start this thing? Guess who gets to think of the theme every year? And then last year we had a great theme, fully known, fully loved. In fact, the students loved it. It was one of our best themes ever. And the summer comes, and the development staff, they do this promotional stuff, and they start reminding me, like, Father, we didn't know the theme. I'm like, oh yeah, okay. I'll get to it. And there's this kind of growing pressure, and finally I was leaving on vacation to go to Ireland in July, and Molly says, like, Father, I have to have it before you leave. I just have to have it. Well, what happened was I was driving to Minneapolis for a conference at the end of May. I was listening to a podcast of Matt Fradd, who was on that Focus video there just a little while ago. Students love Matt Fradd in talking because he's an Aussie, and he has that very thick Aussie accent, and he's just really talented in front of young people and audiences. And he was doing, he does a podcast, but in this particular podcast, he was interviewing a priest, Father Joseph White, who was a Dominican priest of the Eastern Province in Washington, D.C. And Father White has actually just moved. He's moved to Rome to teach at the Angelicum. And he's a really excellent theologian. And so the talk was on providence and predestination, kind of a heavy theological topic. And I was listening to this as I was driving up there, and Father White started talking about hope and how important the virtue of hope is for us in our lives. And he said something that struck me that I've never ever heard anybody else say in my life. He said, I tell people constantly in spiritual direction and in counseling them and meet with them that you have to work the virtue of hope in your life. You've got to exercise the virtue of hope in your life. Because if you don't, you'll lose it. You'll lose it. And that, in my experience, in working with students, is certainly true. This theme, anchored in hope, is proving itself to be providential as we have begun and are now in the middle of this academic year. We all know, as we sit here tonight, that this is not an easy time for the church. It's a rather difficult time, actually, right now. In fact, in the beginning of the school year, the students were talking about what they had seen and what was happening, and the Focus missionaries asked me to talk about it at a Focus Greek event. And so we had the event, and it was down in the church hall, and it was packed. The hall was filled with students, and what I want to convey to you is that there wasn't this sense of anger, or they weren't mad, but they were confused. Like they were saying, like, Father, like, what's going on? What's happening? I'm like, I wish I knew. No, I didn't say that. But to some degree, I thought, yes, that's true. But as I told them, even in a difficult moment like we're in right now, it's actually a moment that's filled with opportunity. Because it's a moment to ask ourselves, like, well, why do I go to church? And why do I believe in Jesus? And what is my faith anchored in? Because it's not me, even though I'm their shepherd and I'm their pastor. Their faith is in God, in Christ. And they needed to be reminded of that, right? As we all do. You know, when I was a young priest in Hastings, I was a little more nervous about talking in front of people, whether my homilies were very good. And I made a friend and an elderly woman there named Peg Hellman, who fell and broke her arm or her while I was there, and she stayed home for several weeks. And on Sundays, I would go out to take her Holy Communion after all the Masses were over. And on one Sunday I was out there, she said, and some of her friends sometimes would be there when I would come, and she said, you know, Father, next week when you come, why don't you come to my place last? And you can give me Holy Communion, and then we can have a scotch. And I said, that sounds awesome, Peg. You're last on the list. And so the first Sunday I'm sitting in Peg's living room, I'm telling her about this, and she says, Father, here's the deal. You do just fine. You do okay. And I want to tell you this, and don't take it the wrong way, but you need to understand that we don't come to Mass because of you. It's a great piece of advice, and it was absolutely true. And obviously, it stuck with me all these years. And have to remember, because a lot of our religious people in our culture, right, Protestant, Catholic, even follow personalities, right? We love Father so-and-so. Well, that's awesome, you know? But if you had a priest who wasn't a very good preacher, he's going to bring you... I'm not using this as an excuse that we don't need to try hard. We do. But at the same time, it is about Christ. We are having a great year this year so far in so many ways and in so many things. You know, this retreat we just had last weekend, just so many. It's been really so many new students around. I meet new students all the time. In a year where we were wondering, our RCIA program, we have more people that have come this year than ever before in history. Like, we have 30-some candidates. It's incredible. When you're asking the first night, well, is anybody going to come? Yeah, they're just incredible. But I'm also conscious at the same time that when all these good things are happening, that there are even harder things happening that we witness and see in the lives of our students as well. In fact, I hate to tell you this, but at the beginning of this week, we had 2 students, not related or connected to each other in any way, but on Monday, who committed suicide. 2 in one day. This morning, I got an email from one of our graduates who's a Focus missionary at NYU, asking me for prayers to pray for a student that he works with who's in the hospital because he attempted suicide. It it's rampant. And the time between each attempt and each one that succeeds is narrowing all the time. Used to be maybe we'd have one a semester you'd hear about. Now we hear about them all the time. Yesterday, I think of this because we had the gospel passage from Mass yesterday, Luke chapter 15, verses 1 through 10. Jesus says, "What man among you having 100 sheep and losing one wouldn't leave the 99 and go after the lost one until he finds it?" The implied answer is no one. Who would take such a great risk, putting the 99 in danger just to go after in search of the one? It's bad economics. But that's not God. That's not God's nature. That is what God does. He goes after the lost one. As Catherine of Siena puts it, God is pazzo d'amore. God is crazy in love. God is crazy, as crazy for you as if you were the only one in the world. I remember learning this as a child because I had a holy card. I think I received it from my mother because I don't know where else I would have gotten it at that time, but it was a picture of Jesus on the cross on one side of the holy card, and on the back side it said this: "If you were the only one who needed to be saved, I would have come." I remember as a 5-year-old child, that card made a deep impression upon me at that early age of who God was to me in my life. And I believe that our mission is to help students not just know that here, but they got to know it here if they're going to live with hope. Because if they know it here, but they don't know it in their heart, hope isn't going to be able to function in their lives. Hope's an infused virtue. It comes to us from God, right? We don't go out and buy it or get it. We receive it in our baptism. It's strengthened in confirmation. It's strengthened every time we receive sacramental grace. But if it isn't nurtured, it'll shrivel up and die. As Father White said in his podcast I was listening to when I was driving to Minneapolis, we don't talk about hope very much. Nobody talks about it. It's an undernourished virtue. And people don't understand how much they need hope in their lives. Hope is the fighter's virtue. It's the spiritual boxer's virtue, if you will. You get punched by the enemy and you punch back with hope. That's what Christians do. Not by talking to the enemy, but by talking to Christ. And telling him, "Christ, my hope is in you. I know this." And hope gets us through the fog of war. Hope carries us through moments of fear. And real hope is not something like saying, "Man, I hope it warms up before the football game starts tomorrow." No, real hope, consequential hope, is always grounded in God. That's real hope. I was fortunate to learn this as a child from my parents. I will be forever grateful to them for this. And I was thinking about this week because it impacts the way I pastor and I minister to students. I remember when I was a seminarian, I was at home for a visit, and it was in the summer. I hopped in the pickup with my dad after Sunday Mass. This wasn't really work. We would ride in the pickup truck to all of our pastures to check on cattle. And I enjoyed that time with my dad. It was that one-on-one time I had with him, and of course he appreciated it because I could open the gate and then he could drive in the pasture and close the gate and hop it back in and check the cattle and go on to the next pasture. And I remember having this conversation with my dad when I was in the seminary about a time before I was born when my mother had an illness. And it was difficult, and my dad was telling me about it. I knew about it, but he had never told me about it. So he was describing it to me, and he said, it was scary, and he didn't know what to do, and he took my mom up to Doc Reeder, our town doctor, who was like one of the pillars of our community, and Doc Reeder said to my dad, I don't know what to tell you. I'm going to call down to Omaha. I think you need to take Angela down to Omaha to the hospital. And so my dad took my mom down, and I said, well, what was that like? And he looked at me, and he's like, oh, he had like 3 little kids under the age of 5 at home. It was scary as hell. What do you think it was like? And I said, well, what did you do? And he looked at me again like, you're the seminary. He didn't say this, but he looked at me like, you're the seminarian, you idiots. And he said, I prayed the rosary over and over and over. It was the only thing I knew how to do. And Mary got us through it. Because then my mom got better and she was fine, and thanks be to God. Otherwise, and then my brother and I after that were born, and it's an amazing story from the time of our family. But I remember that, like, my dad isn't a deep theologian. He's done, he can't explain a lot about the faith to you, but he was a believer. He witnessed that to me when he talked to me about the importance of praying that rosary, right? And so when I minister to students, one of the things that I love to do is, and you see it in our chapel, I promised Mary if I ever got to build a church, I'd do something special for her, which is why we have that beautiful chapel to Our Lady. And one of the things we do, in fact, it started this Monday, we had 50 students begin their preparation to make their consecration to Mary through Jesus through Mary, on December the 8th. And we have a great ceremony planned for that in that chapel on that day, on Saturday after the noon Mass, where they'll make their consecration. And a lot of people would say, well, that's nice. That's a nice little religious thing you do for the kids, Father. No, this is about spiritual warfare. Like, people who have done this, including myself, who've made that consecration, it's a game changer. If you haven't done it, I would encourage you to do it and learn more about it. Because it is a game changer. And when I watch our students do that, so I've learned this practice, we'll do this. This is something French that I learned when I made a retreat in France. When they make their consecration, we're going to put all those students, their names on a ribbon, we're going to roll it up, we're going to put it inside a heart, and we're going to place that heart over the Blessed Mother and trust them all to her. And then when we do the next group, we'll take that heart off and hang it up on the wall, and then we'll do another group, and then we'll do another group. Because our students get hope from that. Another thing that I had experience of when I was a child, and I've told somebody this when I've been with you personally, is that when I was about 10 years old in our parish, our pastor had 40 hours devotion, and he invited all the young people, the kids, to sign up for adoration times and holy hours as well. And so on the way home from Sunday Mass, I said to my parents, "Do you think I should do that?" They're like, "Yeah, you should." So I'm like, okay. So I signed up, and I went up on like a Thursday, and I went up on my little swing bike all the way to church, about a mile, and got it, put it on the side, walked in, and the church was empty. There was one lady sitting in the church. I had never been in church and had that experience before. And I walked up the middle aisle, and she was sitting there, and she looked over and smiled at me, and I genuflected, and I went in the pew. And then I'm swinging my head, gawking, looking around. I'm like, wow, this is really a big place. She got up and smiled and genuflected, and she left. And then I was like, wow, I am all by myself in this big church. All by myself. And then I looked at the altar, and I had this thought. I'm not alone. Christ is here on the altar. That's a pretty profound thought for a 10-year-old, at least I think it was. It felt like it at the time. And I've never questioned Christ's presence in the Eucharist since then, which is why Eucharistic adoration is such a big deal for us at the Niven Center, and why I push it so hard, why we have it every day from 9:30 in the morning until 10 o'clock at night, because I want our students to sit in front of the Eucharist and have that experience and be filled in their heart by Jesus when they do that. And so we went on a Koinonia retreat this past weekend, and all the candidates who will go on the retreat, they're pretty much new students. They haven't been around much, and it's a way for us to kind of bring them into the community. This is last Saturday night. I love this picture I took with my iPhone from the side, like sneaking it in. And we're in this camp up by Bellevue, and this is during Eucharistic adoration on Saturday night. Look at those faces on those young men, women. This is, for most of them, the first time they've ever had this experience. And they love it. They love it. Just a matter of introducing them to it. So again, they learn, this is like, oh yeah, I get hope from this, right? Treating them in a conscious way to be realizing that in their lives. And it's just beautiful. And then on this week, then all these new kids, they're all around. They're at the Newman Center all the time. They're in the community. And they're in front of the Eucharist. And you see transformational change take place in some of these kids, students in their lives. Last thing, there's lots of examples of things that we do to try to help students have hope. One of the things that we've done now for a long time is we've really encouraged our students to be a part of mission trips. And we have students who go on mission trips literally with Focus and through other efforts all over the world. We've sent students from here everywhere. Europe, South America, Africa, Asia, all over the world. And it's interesting because one of the things that happens, and when I was on the Focus board early on, when Focus started for 8 years, we had a member of our board who said, I think this mission trip stuff is stupid. Like, this is just a hoax. This is just a waste of money. Because these kids go on these mission trips and they go to wherever, Malaysia, and they don't really do anything to help those people there. This is just people using this as an opportunity to milk money out of people. And I was like, no, it's not that. That's not why we're doing it. When these students go on these trips, it's a game changer for them because, first of all, they don't have their phone. Their phone doesn't work. You might have a student who's in Bible study, you might get them for their attention for 15 hours a week outside of Sunday Mass at best. And when you take them to Peru for 3 weeks, and they can't just get on a bus and go home, and they can't call mom and dad, and they kind of have to face the reality of their lives. And they also have to look at these people that they're there to mingle with and learn about and try to serve in some way. And it's incredible because I've heard this testimony time and time and time again of students who come back from these trips, and it's changed them. They don't live with any sense of self-pity anymore. They have a renewed sense that I need to contribute. I need to do something. I need to not sit on my duff and be worried about myself, but there's a lot of need in the world and I need to get busy. It takes them outside of themselves, right? Gives them hope. It's beautiful. So that they don't wallow in pity, self-doubt, all these things. Why me? Poor me. When they get down into a third world country and they realize that to have toilet paper is a pretty incredible thing, yeah, it makes them think differently about their lives. These are just a few things that we do at the Newman Center to help our students recognize their need for hope and then to have it become living in them in the way that it's meant to. I never get tired of this mission and what we're called to do with these students. And God shows us, Father Mills would attest to this, time and time again, almost on a daily basis, we see this transformation that takes place in students' hearts when they are awakened to this reality. My only regret sometimes is that I wish we could, and we're working on that, I'm working on a project right now with Drew and his design development staff is helping with it about how to be even more effective in our outreach than we are. Because I'm just never satisfied. I don't think I ever will be. I hope I never will be. But it means the world. It means so much that you're here tonight because it makes me hopeful as well. Because you understand, I believe, the need for it. I've had conversations with so many of you individually about this. And by your support and by your willingness to help us, you are obviously affirming that this is an important mission. And I can't thank you enough for that. And to see a room full like this every year at HuskerCatholicLive, to know we have this kind of support is a real blessing. So thank you again, and thank you for being here. And thank you for your support tonight and hopefully your continued support of our Newman Center Apostolate. God bless you.